Can everybody hear me? Good. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our meeting of the Wake County Board of Education. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and it is 5:36. I'll vote to determine our quorum. I'll start with our Vice Chair, Mrs. Cash.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Mrs. Kushner.
I'm here, thanks.
Dr. Martin.
I'm here. Good evening.
Scott.
Here.
Present.
Ms. Johnson Hostler. Lindsay Mahaffey.
Here.
Chris Haggerty.
Here.
All right, I see Ms. Johnson Hostler there, but she may be away from her camera. Board Chair Keith Sutton here as well, so we do have a quorum. Right, at this time, if you all would with me in a pledge of allegiance. We don't have a flag, and we're standing away. Allegiance
To the flag
Of the United States of America,
and to the republic.
for which it stands, one nation,
Under
God,
Indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
for that. And so we will dive right into our information item. Ms. Johnson Hostler, you're with us now? Johnson Hostler? We can see her, so we're going to count her present. So we'll start with our information item, starting with Superintendent Comments. Superintendent Moore.
Good evening. I'd like to start by congratulating the more than 11,000 members of the class of 2020 who wrapped up their graduation festivities last week. While the pandemic forced us to alter or cancel many of the traditional senior rites of passage, our high school administrators and staff went to great lengths to create meaningful graduation ceremonies, both virtual and in person. Our virtual celebrations, which are still available at wcpss.net/graduation, have garnered more than 75,000 views. And there is much to celebrate. To start, we know of at least $150 million in scholarships earned by the members of the class of 2020. I say at least because many scholarship programs delayed final announcements due to the pandemic, so we are still in the process of gathering scholarship information. The class of 2019 set a record $181 million in scholarships earned. With the number of schools, organizations, and individual students yet to report, we feel confident that we will come close to, if not exceed, that total. We know that some of our graduates have received full scholarships to North Carolina State University, UNC Chapel Hill, North Carolina A&T, William Peace University, Howard University, NYU, Brigham Young University, and military service academies, as well as others. We have other graduates who have been accepted to prestigious universities such as Harvard, Yale, Dartmouth, Princeton, Duke, and Stanford. Our seniors have displayed remarkable grace and maturity in adjusting to these unprecedented events. My hope is that this experience will give them added strength and resilience to face whatever challenges lay in store. Once again, congratulations to every graduate and my best wishes to you as you embark on your next great journey. As you know, the pandemic has also impacted athletics, cutting short spring sports seasons and delaying summer workouts. Just as with our graduating class, our student athletes have many achievements to celebrate, even amid the disappointments. Our high schools hosted virtual senior night ceremonies for spring sports for our student athletes to make sure they got the send-off they deserved. And WRAL's High School OT recently held their 2020 awards show where WCPSS athletics was well represented. The individual winners were Anya Poole of Southeast Raleigh Magnet High School for girls basketball, Morgan Smalls of Panther Creek High School for girls track, Addie Kamek of Broughton Magnet High School for girls lacrosse, Ian Harrison of Panther Creek High School for boys cross country, Drew Lovelace of Holly Springs High School for boys soccer, Nick Farrar of Apex Friendship High School for boys basketball, Dominique Alexander of Millbrook Magnet High School for boys track, Michael Moore of Green Hope High School for boys swimming, Logan Wheeler of Fuquay-Varina High School for boys lacrosse, Nicole Myers, the Southeast Raleigh girls basketball coach, was named Female Coach of the Year, while Mike Dunphy of Cary High School was named Athletic Director of the Year. Finally, the Wake Forest boys soccer team was named the Team of the Year. Congratulations to these winners and to all of our 1920 student athletes. We look forward to the day when you can all get safely back in the game. Lastly, I would like to commend the hardworking staff and volunteers at Wake Up and Read for continuing to support children's literacy even amid the pandemic. They continued to collect books even after schools closed, 110,000 total. They've now been able to provide 8 books each to about 7,000 students at 12 of our elementary schools, with 1 more school set to receive books for their students in need. This would not have been possible without the help of 80 volunteers who put in over 300 working hours while observing safety protocols. Wake Up and Read will continue distribution efforts this summer, coordinating with summer feeding sites and partner agencies to distribute prepackaged books through the Grab, Go, and Read initiative. Research shows that without summer learning opportunities, students can lose weeks or even months of reading achievement by the time they reach back into school the next fall. Ensuring that children have books in their home over summer break, especially given that school closure impacted some families' access to resources, can help reduce those losses. Wake Up and Read has provided invaluable support for so many years, but this year they went above and beyond to serve our students during this critical time. My thanks to all the partner agencies and volunteers for their unwavering commitment to literacy. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore, for those comments. I'll be brief with my comments as we continue to enjoy the opportunity to share with the media and the community on each Friday. But just very briefly, again, want to extend a heartfelt congratulations to all of our seniors. We have now completed all of our both in-person and virtual graduations, and they seem to have gone quite well, and people were actually are pretty pleased at the opportunity to have a more intimate graduation experience. So to all of our 2020 graduates, congratulations. Please stay tuned and look forward to our continued work as we focus on the reopening of Wake County Public Schools amid this pandemic. Our starting tomorrow, I believe we'll have the first of our BAC meetings where members from the community, along with long-standing BAC members, will have the opportunity to provide input and feedback on some of our initial plans as we consider things such as cleaning and hygiene and many other challenges that we see going forward as we reopen our schools during this pandemic. And so we encourage as many of you who can to participate in that. We look forward to receiving your feedback. We've already received feedback from thousands of parents and other stakeholders, and we continue to look forward to hearing more from you, our general public. And lastly, I would like to thank the Wake County Commissioners for their continued support. Last night, they passed their budget, and in that included funding for continuing to maintain our per pupil allotment here in Wake County. And that is important to us as we will continue to see growth students coming into Wake County. And though we are in a challenging time and uncertain economic circumstances, it is important that we maintain a high quality education for all students in Wake County. And so that support from our Wake County Commissioners is vitally important. And I, along with my colleagues here on the board, thank you tremendously for your continued support. With that, I'll pass it on to Vice Chair Roxy Cash.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. Good evening. I would also like to echo what you said, Keith Sutton, about the Wake County Commissioners. I appreciate what we have with them. I appreciate their support. I look forward to more of that in the future. And so thank you to them for continuing our per pupil allotment. I also echo the fact that I think our graduations, the ones that I've witnessed, were very touching. I thought that the principals had a good opportune time to talk to each graduate as they came across the stage, or if they were in the car. But I saw that the principals of each school were able to actually talk to each graduate, so I appreciated that. And with that, I look forward to our back meeting that will be on Wednesday at 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, and we'll be on a virtual back meeting. I look forward to all the comments. Thank you.
All right, Ms. We'll start with you.
Good evening, and thanks again for the opportunity and for all the work that my colleagues have been doing in the last few days as we look at reopening schools. I also want to add my congratulations to our class of 2020. It was truly joyous to be at Sanderson and at Broughton to see the graduates, as Chair Sutton mentioned, to have a smaller and more intimate graduation, to cross the stage at their school. At Broughton, they were able to go up to the bell tower and sign their names as other classmates have done before them. So it was inspiring to be with them. Want to also thank the United Arts Council of Wake County for a virtual First Friday that last week included 4 of our students through the Artists in Schools program that had worked with artists in schools who helped them with creative writing. They were able to showcase 4 of our students from Washington Elementary, Joyner Elementary, Wiley Elementary, and Lufkin Road Middle, and have those students read their work to a captive virtual audience. It was a wonderful event, so thanks to United Arts. Tomorrow, the District 6 BAC will be meeting at 4 o'clock virtually, and so if you're a BAC member, you should have received a link, and I invite the public who lives in District 6 to give us your feedback on reopening schools. And know that we board members are looking at the public comment that has been submitted through the portal for our meeting. Please note for all of you that we are looking through public comment. We're taking all of it seriously, and I thank you for staying engaged. And also want to add my thanks to our county commissioners for the great support in the coming year and accepting the needs we have to plan for opening schools and for also the uncertainties that we have going forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that. Ms. Kushner, Dr. Martin.
Thank you. I too want to add my congratulations to all of the graduates this year. It's an impressive crop, impressive scholarships. We look forward to what you will do in the future, graduates. It's been a crazy time, but we know you're going to meet the challenge. I had the great pleasure this last week to join the graduations, some of the graduations at Athens Drive and at Middle Creek. It was a pleasure, watching your families celebrate this great achievement. I will note that this intimate setting gave me a different perspective that I know but don't always see as families came to celebrate their graduates. We had large extended families. We had, individual family members, a sibling, a single parent joining our graduates. And I was particularly touched that in several occasions, graduates had no family or friends join. Quite touching that the school was these folks' families. So this smaller occasion just gave another opportunity to recognize the importance of our schools in building community, building family for many of our students. I've also appreciated a couple meetings over the last 2 weeks with a variety of teachers, particularly organized through the NCAE. Thank you for the work that you all are doing to think about what effective opening of schools can and should be. Thank you for the service that you give in classrooms every day. And I just want to reiterate and affirm that I want to do the best we can to be sure that any decisions we make in terms of opening the school, in terms of creating work environments, we need to make sure that we're creating work environments that we would be comfortable going into ourselves. We can't just take a position that we're going to send you into a setting. So know that I, and I believe my colleagues, will keep in mind that we need to create a working environment that we ourselves would be comfortable going into and sending our family members into. Thank you again for what you do. Ms. Kushner noted the United Arts Council Writers Program. It was a great and inspiring time. All the writers were fantastic. A couple of them just completely blew me away with the quality and the creativity of the writing. Build and keep your voice. It is incredibly important. You have a lot to share. I note that June 4th would have been the evening that we would have celebrated teaching assistants. The annual teaching assistant banquet is always a lot of fun to share and celebrate the great work of our teaching and instructional assistants across the district. Thank you for your work. I'm sorry that we couldn't celebrate in the normal way, but now more than ever, the work that instructional assistants provide to our students is incredibly important. Know your work is valued. We need, obviously, with working conditions, pay, and whatnot, to make sure that that continues to be reflected. But even though we couldn't be with you physically, we were there in spirit. I too want to thank the commissioners for providing the constant per capita funding, and look forward to our continuing work with you as we address the unprecedented challenges before us. A couple other issues, in terms of naming of schools and SRO issues. Thank you for the comments that has been shared from the community. I think there'll be more opportunity for discussion later, so I won't make any comments on that right now. I'll just conclude by noting that the District 5 BAC meeting will be on Tuesday, June the 23rd, and we will meet at 9 o'clock in the morning. And BAC members, that link should have been provided. These are open meetings, so if anybody's interested, it's on, information is online, or please contact me and I'll make sure you get that information. Look forward to the discussions with you about opening of schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Mr. Haggerty.
You pulled one on me there. I was expecting Miss Scott.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I went around too fast.
No worries. Again, in the interest of time, just a special thank you and congratulations to our entire class of 2020. Because of scheduling conflicts with schools having the events at the same time, I only got to see one of the graduations in person, but there really was a lot of joy in the faces of everyone who got to cross that stage. And I just can't say enough about how important that was. And I thank everybody involved in that, and really wish the best to all of our graduates. I'll also say, again, another round of thanks to our county commissioners. I fully understand that they had some very difficult decisions to make, and their support for, helping us continue forward with the public schools, especially with everything we're experiencing with COVID-19 and what steps we may need to be taking this fall is greatly appreciated. Finally, you've heard everyone talk about our board advisory committees. Again, this is going to be one of the best opportunities to get, parents, teachers, anyone in the public into a forum to talk about the reopening of schools, what it will look like, what the options are. And so if you are in Northwest Raleigh, Morrisville, if you're in District 7, we'll be having our board advisory committee virtually this Thursday, June 8th, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Again, talking about all of the different options that are out there in a moderated discussion. As Dr. Martin said, the links to all of these meetings will be available on the Wake County Public Schools website. And if you can join us, I hope you will. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hagerty. Mrs. Scott, I got to
Thank you. Thanks. Good evening. I also wanted to say a big thank you to principals, faculty, staff, and parent volunteers for the graduations. I really appreciated the invitation to be able to attend a few of the in-person events at 5 of the District 1 high schools, and was thankful for the opportunity to watch all of the virtual ones as well. I know a lot of work went into this, but as someone who taught 4 years at a high school, and you're with those students, it's a very different environment, especially as a music teacher. And I really loved watching teachers be able to come out and celebrate and cheer their students on, able to see them one last time in person. And as much as our graduation ceremonies at the convention center certainly are a very noble event, the personal touch to all of this, I think, was so appreciated by the families. So that it was really great. And one of them I have to share really quick. There was a young man graduating from Roseville High School, and his younger sister was there. And she was able to get right in front of him and say, "I'm so excited for you." And she was smiling. She was so proud of her brother. And they walked hand in hand to the next station. That's something that's very special and very unique. And the class of 2020 will always be able to carry that with them. I do also want to thank the county commissioners for meeting that per pupil expenditures that we so desperately needed. I know that was a hard decision, and I know that sacrifice went into doing that. Our schools, though, need this. Our schools are very special. We've got an interesting road ahead of us in these next few weeks as we're planning for what school will look like. Our District 1 Board Advisory Council meeting, virtual meeting, is tomorrow. Dr. Savage did let me know that there will be a Spanish translator. So if that was something that was discouraging someone from participating, I hope that they'll be encouraged to attend and take advantage of that. And there also is a closed captioning feature, and people will also be able to call in. So we definitely want to encourage people to participate, to share their thoughts, and to continue doing that as they have been. Several of my colleagues mentioned that we hear the community, we hear the concerns across an entire spectrum of concerns when it comes to SROs in our schools, and there will be opportunity for conversation for that later. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
thank you, Mrs. Scott. Mrs. Mahaffey.
Hi, I just was able to go to a few of my high schools and see the graduations. Really want to thank the faculty, staff, and administrators for this personal touch that they were able to give each and every one of our students that attended graduation. The work that you put into it, the care you put into these was just so evident as you walked into the doors of our buildings. And thank you to our families. You know, I saw many families walking through buildings, trying to make sure they were maintaining their social distance, and it certainly is an end to an interesting time in their senior year. And I'm going to end my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mahaffey. Ms. Johnson-Hostler. Ms. Johnson-Hostler, your mic is muted. Ms. Johnson-Hostler, you're still muted.
Mr. Sutton, she's having issues with sound. I'm going to work with her now.
Okay. All right, Mr. Fletcher, let me go to you, and we'll come back to Ms. Johnson-Hostler.
Thank you very much. I too would like to say thank you, congratulate the graduates across Wake County, 11,000 strong. That's fantastic. Later in the year, we'll know what that percentage was. We've been bumping against 90% of our 4-year cohort graduating each year. Could it be that this year, with all the other things that happen, we actually break through that 90% threshold? We'll find out probably August, September. Thank you for the community input. We've had thousands of people provide input through the thought exchange relative to how should we open school? What are the issues that are important to you? And there are almost as many issues or ideas as there are the people who've submitted them. So we're grateful for that. There are some common themes that are informing the work of the staff and the board, and I want to thank all of you for giving that input. Sometimes you go to a website and say, well, will anybody see this? The answer is yes, thank you. County commissioners as well. We are partners with this county commission and appreciate that. We know they have a tough budget road to go. We appreciate what they have allocated, what they have committed to the school district at this point, and support them in that decision. The Board Advisory Council 9 for District 9 will be meeting Thursday of this week at 5:30 p.m. We will be discussing how do we reopen school, those things that would be most important to parents and community, and look forward to community participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Ms. Johnson-Hostler, is she available now? Okay, she's probably still working through her sound issues. I do, before I comment, just want to remind several board members mention their upcoming BAC meetings and the opportunity to provide input. I ask you to, members of the public, if you're interested in participating, reach out to your board member for more information and a link to that meeting. They can share that information with you. So again, just look up what district you are a part of and reach out to your board member by email, and they will get to you a link to participate in those meetings. At this time, I want to move to our approval of the meeting agenda. Before I ask for an approval of the meeting agenda, I would like to add an action item, that action item being the renaming of Daniels Middle School. So I'd like to add one action item to our action agenda, and that is the renaming of Daniels Middle School. If I can entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda with the said amendment.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve tonight's agenda with the changes.
Second, Jim Martin.
I got a motion by Ms. Mahaffey and a second by Dr. Martin to approve tonight's agenda with amendment. I'll start with the roll call vote, and Ms. Cash,
Yes.
Ms. Kushner,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Mr. Hagerty,
Aye.
Ms. Mahaffey,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson. She's still not with us. Mr. Fletcher,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. So that's a vote of 8-0 with approval of tonight's meeting agenda as amended. Board members, let me remind you, with that addition, you may want to hit your home button at some point to now refresh the agenda so that you'll see the added item. While you're doing that, I will move us to public comment. Residents wishing to address the Wake County Board of Education may submit their comments or video by noon the day of the meeting. Be found at www.wcpss.net. The following citizens have submitted comments as part of our public comment portion of this evening's agenda. Their comments can be found on the same online agenda that we are using for tonight's meeting. That agenda, as well as guidelines for those wishing to submit comments for future virtual meetings, can be found also at our website, www.wcpss.net, under the tab labeled School Board. We have 48 public comments tonight. Those who submitted comments, and I will read the topic so you have a sense of what the public is speaking to us on. Holly Wittenborn, School Opening Plan. Deanna Harris, Advanced Math and Middle School. Nicolette Galvin, Overcrowding and Social Distancing. Dasa York, Green School Initiatives. Jen Andrew, School Resource Officers. Whitney Tucker, School Resource Officers. Mir Garvey, Accommodations for Special Needs Children. Lynn Walter, School Resource Officers. Brandon Lee, Charles Nichols, Sarah Bidron, Christopher Nordstrom, Lamont Perkins, Neville Eckloff, all School Resource Officers. Jyothi Saxby Kumaran, Davis Drive Middle School Orchestra. April DeVoe, Suggestions for School Structure. Sarah Bidron, already named before. Kondo, Davis Drive Middle School Orchestra. Kendall, School Resource Officers. Corrine Kokanis. Petition opposed contracts made with police departments. Erica Flory, Every Trade Counts. Mihul Shah, Davis Drive Middle School Orchestra. Rafida Asantaro, Davis Drive Middle School Orchestra. Kurt Info, Benjamin Davison, Discipline Data and Supports. Mr. Jeffrey Abelt, Conflict Resolution Team, not provided. Melinda Morrison, Google Classroom, Access to Parents. Angela and Franklin Reeves, Communicating Grades. Julie Hosen, Archive Public Comments. Joseph Instructional Assistants with Degrees, Lee Williams, Sustainability in Schools, Amy Killoran, Davis Drive Middle School Orchestra, Tanya Shuchuk, Davis Drive Middle School Orchestra, John Marshall, Noreen Sample, Amy Marshall, Lauren Macklem, all school resource officers, Gaiola Holischak, Davis Drive Middle School Orchestra, Isabella Mia Norris Santos and Luisa Santos, Davis Drive Middle School Orchestra, Tammy Platts and Kimberly Kuntz, school resource officers, Heather Mary Edwards, mental health assistance for students, Fernando Martinez, action items MOU, Reed School resource officers, Bly, secondary math programs, Christina Quinn, school resource officers, Gayla Putnam, school resource officers, and Kat Lewis, school resource officers. All of those individuals have submitted public comments tonight. All right.
Mr. Chair,
Motion to approve consent.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the consent agenda. That's Bill Fletcher.
Okay. I get a second.
Christine Kushner, I can second.
Got a second from, a motion to approve consent from Mr. Fletcher and a second from Ms. Kushner. I'll call for the roll call vote. I'll start with Mr. Fletcher.
Aye.
Is Ms. Johnson Hosper with us now? Okay, assuming not. Ms. Mahaffey?
Aye.
Was that Ms. Johnson Hosper? Okay. Ms. Mahaffey, aye vote?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Haggerty?
This is Chris Haggerty. Aye.
Mrs. Scott?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye.
Mrs. Kushner?
Aye.
Mrs. Cash?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Agenda is approved. That brings us to our action agenda. We've got several items there on action tonight, of which is from finance. And this is staff is requesting approval of an budget resolution for 2020, 2021. That is being presented by David Nieder. Mr. Nieder, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Sutton, members of the board, and Superintendent Moore. At their meeting yesterday, as you've already heard, the Wake County Board of Commissioners approved the county's 2020-2021 budget. And that budget includes a one-time increase in county appropriation to Wake County Public Schools to provide stable per pupil funding based upon student growth projections for Wake County. Specifically, it's an increase of $11,949,000. As this is your last currently scheduled meeting prior to the end of the fiscal year, we're asking the board to adopt an interim budget resolution tonight. The interim budget resolution will allow the system to continue to pay salaries and ordinary expenses effective July 1st and up until the time that the board adopts a final budget resolution. We still do not, and we will be bringing back recommendations to balance the board's proposed budget to funding that is available for the year. At this time, we still don't know what the timeline looks like for the state's budget for the 2020-2021 year. So it's possible, and I think perhaps even likely, that we'll bring those recommendations to reconcile the budget even before we have a final state budget for next year. I think we've all discussed through this unique year budget process that the budget will be fluid for the coming year with likely adjustments and amendments as we go through the year and as the economy, the impact of the pandemic shows itself through the economy. That said, I would now ask the board's consideration of approval of an interim budget resolution for the 2020-2021 fiscal year.
Chair Sutton, I would like to make that motion, please.
Ma'am, go ahead, Ms. Cash.
I would like the motion to accept that budget interim.
Lindsay Mahaffey, I second.
Got a motion from Mrs. and a second from Mrs. Mahaffey to approve staff's request for adoption of an interim budget. We'll call for the roll call vote. You, Mrs. Cash, since you made the motion.
Yes, aye.
Mrs. Kushner,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mrs. Scott,
Aye.
Mr. Hegarty.
I will say that I was expecting some discussion, but I will go ahead with an aye.
I apologize.
All right, sir. I think we're in agreement on this one.
Okay. Mrs. Mahaffey,
Aye.
Johnson Hosler, are you with us yet? Ms. Johnson Hosler, if you're with us, could you possibly turn on your camera and maybe even give us a thumbs up?
Mr. Sutton, I think she has had to turn her machine off and restart.
Okay. All right, Mr. Fletcher.
Aye.
All right. And before I cast my vote and carry the vote, I will pause here and allow for any board member that wants to provide any discussion the opportunity to do so. Mr. Hagerty.
Again, as we go forward, I know that with all of the reopening plans and everything, we will need flexibility, and there might be additional changes from what we envisioned when the budget was first put into place. And I'm just going to rely on staff to keep us updated on those as we go forward. Again, our thanks to the County Commission for this additional support. It's not everything that we asked for, but understanding the times we're in, I certainly appreciate what they were able to do.
Thank you, Mr. Hagerty, for those comments. And again, I apologize for moving. Are there any other board members who wish to offer any comments regarding the budget?
This is Christine Kushner. I did want to add also to Mr. Hagerty's comments that for staff to keep us appraised, but also quantify the needs that we have to make sure safety and health are foremost priorities for the district. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And so I will cast the final vote and will cast our vote in support as well. And that gives us unanimous support for the interim budget. That budget is approved.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we'll now move to the 2020-2021 instruction calendar with action on the single track 4 year-round calendar. Wade Martin, you're up.
Good evening again, Chair Sutton, Superintendent Moore, and board members. I do have with me this evening as well, Tamani Anderson-Powell, the director in our magnet programs, joining me from our calendar committee. Tonight, staff brings to you a proposed 2020-2021 single track 4 year-round calendar that we reviewed and discussed this afternoon with you in today's work session. The calendar committee is requesting approval of the single track 4 year-round calendar as recommended on May 19th, 2020 as the track 4 of the now board approved 2020-2021 multi-track year-round calendar. Staff understands at this time that there is a technical correction to the definition of year-round schools in progress, and it is expected to be approved prior to the conclusion of the current legislative session. In the event that the technical correction is not adopted, Staff will bring the single track 4 year-round calendar back to the board for additional review and decision. The calendar committee is seeking board approval of this proposed calendar. Thank you.
Chair Sutton enthusiastically would like to make a motion to approve this track 4 calendar.
Mr. Sutton, Bill Fletcher, second.
All right, I got a motion by Mrs. Cash and a second by Mr. Fletcher to approve staff's request for the single track 4 year-round 2020-2021 instructional calendar. Again, I'll start with the roll call vote.
May I make one comment first?
Sorry, yes, sir.
That's okay. Mr. Martin said so, but this is the calendar that we originally looked at as a board that was shared with the community, and we're able to come back to that calendar because of some good work by staff and board members and working with the legislature to correct some unintentional errors in the COVID session law. So thank you to all those who made effort and outreach to solve this and another problem. Thank you.
Are there other comments? Okay, hearing none and seeing no hands, Mrs.
Aye.
Mrs. Kushner,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mrs. Scott,
Aye.
Mr. Hegarty,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson Hostler, are you with us?
Aye.
Great. Mr. Fletcher,
Aye.
I vote aye as well, and that gives unanimous approval of the single 4 year-round calendar for our 2020-2021 instructional calendars.
Well, I thank you again for all of your time and efforts as we work through all of these calendars to support all of the various schools across our district. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Martin and Mr. Powell. Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is a school resource officer memorandum of understanding. Dr. Lord Gardner and Mr. Russ Smith will be presenting this item.
Thank you, Chair Sutton, board members, Superintendent Moore. The district has had a collaborative school resource officer memorandum of understanding since 2009. The current agreement has an expiration date of June 30, 2020. Due to current restrictions related to COVID-19, the proposed agreement is for 1 year as opposed to our normal 3-year agreement. During the 2020-2021 school year, a timeline will be followed that will allow comprehensive community and law enforcement input. Proposed agreement for tonight is based upon feedback from board members, staff, Darrington Smith, community impact, and law enforcement agencies. Those proposed revisions include Article 3, Section 3 on page 5, a requirement that non-SRO law enforcement has to report to school to advise the principal whenever possible upon arrival. Article 3, Section 6 on page 7, which is an update to the reference to student records policy 4700. Article 3, Section 3, page 9, specifies the process for resolving a disagreement between the SRO and school administration in reference to the interpretation of the SRO MOU. Article 4, Section 3 on page 9, which is a reference to the reporting obligations in reference to Senate Bill 199 and the North Carolina General Statute 115C-288. Article 6, page 10 and 11, an edit for clarification in reference to the Senior Director of Security's authority to report any concerns about an SRO. And then finally, Article 2, Section 1, an update to the training requirements under the training with and the assignment of an SRO to be completed within 1 year of placement. And then there is one additional change that is not in the current document that we are recommending or proposing. And that's based upon some recent law enforcement feedback that we just received to reflect that the requisite 40 hours of Justice Academy training must be delivered by a trainer approved by the North Carolina Justice Education and Training Standards Commission. At this time, staff is requesting board approval.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Chair Sutton, I would like to make a motion to approve this recommendation.
All right. Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, I would move to second this 1 year extension of the current SRO agreement.
Got a motion by Mrs. Cash and a second by Mr. Fletcher to approve the school resource officer memorandum of understanding for a 1 year. Is there any discussion? Let me start first by as evidenced by the number of comments during public comment that there is great concern around this SRO MOU and our continued partnership with law enforcement agencies throughout the county. We too, I think as a district, are concerned with that, given the recent events that have taken place in our country. I can assure those in the community, first I ask attention to the timeline that is here, both our board, staff, and community, that we have a very robust timeline where that will give us an opportunity to solicit and engage in real and authentic feedback from the community as we look at going forward our relationship with law enforcement officers and their presence in our buildings. While we are concerns around safety, the school to prison pipeline, and other things, we do think that it would be irresponsible and unreasonable to pull them out at this point. But we certainly want to continue to look at this process, our engagement with them, and come up with reasonable plans to figure out, again, how we can move forward and play our role, and I think it's an important role, in helping to inform and change policies as it relates to law enforcement officers in the public school system. And as the state's largest district and one of the largest districts in the country, I think we certainly can play a leadership role in coming up with and creating unique and innovative ways to create better partnerships, to improve communication, and to make sure that we have school buildings across the county and across the state that are safe for students and employees. Any other comment? Mr. Haggerty.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. You know, I am not happy about this vote, and I'm not happy about the process by which we arrived at it. We talked about going out and truly engaging the community in this discussion. And we had time to prepare, but it was put off. And then we had the COVID-19 epidemic. And understandably, that changed all of our plans for the year. But this is an issue where we have had no board discussion. We can't talk about the effectiveness of these programs or the alternative of these programs in closed session. You know, this is an open session topic and it hasn't been scheduled. And we receive lots of feedback from the community, parents, principals who talk about the value of SROs and why they want to keep them in the schools, and from other members of the community that talk about problems with SROs, poor behavior by individual SROs, and ideas for reform. And we haven't had the conversation about what the best policy is going forward. A month ago, even asking for the opportunity to take another week or 2 weeks to have a public discussion about this topic in a public setting like a work session, we were told that we couldn't because of the timeline, that we had to move forward, that we couldn't make changes, that drafts had been shared, and that the idea that we could go back and change those drafts and change those discussions wouldn't be fair to law enforcement, and they wouldn't have time to adequately change and consider those changes. I think the board came up with a reasonable alternative, which was rather than go forward with another renewal, another 3-year renewal, we said that we will only go forward for 1 year. And during that time, we will have to have this discussion. And if I'm out there in the community, I've heard this organization promise and promise and promise more feedback and never get it, I would be skeptical of my own comments right now. You know, I'm upset because we hear here that we get the proposed draft of the MOU back and there's a last-minute change by law enforcement. Again, we don't have time to make any changes or have any discussion, but we're expected to accommodate those changes. I understand the need for an SRO role in the schools. I think there are very reasonable public questions about how we operate. And I think particularly when community members come to us with questions about very reasonable suggestions on limitations of use of force in our schools as the simplest of accommodations, that those are things that we ought to be able to ask of those who we invite into our schools. I know that, again, there's value here, and if we didn't have a contract, we don't have anything in place, we don't have an alternative, and I don't think that's acceptable. But I think we can do better. I really do. And so I am really struggling with this vote because, again, I think we need the officers play a valuable role, but we have to start this community process somewhere. And when you look at reasonable things that have been asked in the wake of what's going on in our community about, you know, restrictions on things like chokeholds, restrictions on shooting in public spaces, these are not unreasonable limitations. And maybe some of these are already covered in local law enforcement policies about use of force. But I haven't had that question to get that answered. So I'm expressing my dissatisfaction with the choices we have before us. And I really would like a commitment that going forward, we will open this up, we will have the discussion, we'll have an opportunity for board member questions, we'll have an opportunity for public engagement, and that we will be willing to take a stand and say, you know what, this contract is a two-way negotiation. And where there are reasonable protections that we need for our students, that we'll be able to ask for those. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hagerty, and you have that commitment. Ms. Mahaffey.
Thank you. I echo some of Mr. Hagerty's comments. This was something that we brought and said we were going to have a discussion with the community, and you know, it just did not get to happening. What I do note is in the précis, we do see a timeline. Mr. Smith and Dr. Gardner, I was wondering, we say, it says solicit feedback from the public and law enforcement agencies by November 1st, 2020. What, if we could get a more fleshed out of what that feedback is going to entail, who are we speaking with? What are those timelines? How can people have those conversations with us, especially those folks in the public that would like to engage in this conversation and who have been waiting to engage in this conversation? I would really like to see more of how we're going to be engaging the public in this conversation. Thank you.
Dr. Gardner, Mr. Smith, do you have a sense of that at this point?
So what I'll say is that we haven't made the exact plans of what we've done, but in the past, what we have done is we've reached out to some of the community advocacy groups that have a strong desire and interest. We've done that before in the past in reference to policies that we've worked on. And so I would see us being able to do that, as well as being able to provide community access, whether it be through providing access online to be able to provide feedback, written feedback, and or us being able to have some type of meetings where we can have that engagement and get the community feedback. The same thing we would do with law enforcement would be to have a meeting with all the agencies at one time and be able to gather their feedback as well.
Okay. Would we be able to see a little bit more of that timeline once it's more fleshed out leading up to November 1st?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And I'll add, Ms. Mahaffey, I think given the concern around and the sensitivity around this topic, I think what Mr. Smith has outlined, it would be wise for us to perhaps also consider perhaps some additional ways of gathering that feedback and building support in the community. So the staff will certainly work at that. We'll talk with Superintendent Moore about how we might be able to expand that opportunity.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, Chair.
Scott.
Thank you. I do very much appreciate what Mr. Haggerty and what Ms. Mahaffey shared, particularly Mr. Haggerty being concerned about what types of opportunity we have to listen to policy and use the feedback that, or to hear the suggested policy, using the feedback from constituents and using that to work collectively together. And that opportunity, as we understand, was COVID absolutely impacted. And Mr. Smith, I do appreciate that you are open and have used meetings in the past to gain not only feedback from the community, but also feedback from the various departments that are involved in this. I want to acknowledge that I hear this wide spectrum of concerns. I hear the frustration from groups who said, you told us 3 years ago that we were going to have a conversation about this, that we were going to be more involved with discussions. And I recognize that there are people who do not want any part of having SROs in our schools. And there are also people who would not feel safe coming to our schools at all. I will share with you that at one of the schools that I attended their in-person graduation ceremony, an SRO came out to say goodbye to a student that they had a very positive relationship with. And so we know that is there. We know that potential is there, and we know that exists. But I do think it's incredibly important that we pay very close attention to the policies that define this and have opportunity for all stakeholders to share their concerns and their own personal experiences with us, and that we have this collective conversation as we move forward And those stakeholders include our principals, they include our teachers, they include families, past and present. It really does involve the community members who live around a school. I mean, this is something that needs to be a collective conversation, and voices do need to be amplified, because when we're talking about these types of meetings and we're talking about gathering feedback, we all know that there are people who will not go to those meetings, that are afraid to go to some community meetings for whatever reason, and their voices need to be amplified, and we need to make sure that we offer a variety of ways for those concerns to be shared so that we can hear them as we move forward with this work. And that were the comments I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Scott. Dr. Martin.
Thank you. I want to reiterate my agreement with Mr. Haggerty's. I think you've Chris and in agreement. This is conversation that needs to be ongoing. It's not a one-time conversation. Before I address some specific comments, I would appreciate clarification on the funding structure of the SROs. This is something that we hear a lot of people talking about. And it is my understanding that, at least for all the high schools, the SRO funding comes from the state to be used for SROs and is not a funding line that we could take from one area and put to another area. Is that correct?
So, Dr. Martin, this is Kathy Moore. Mr. Haggerty asked me that question about an hour ago. And I'm checking into it because I believe that our SRO funding comes to us in the at-risk allotment from the state. The at-risk allotment has some flexibilities in transfers. So I'm just checking to make absolutely sure. It is a flexible allotment, but I'm checking to make sure just so you understand, I think make sure that the at-risk allotment that comes to us for SROs, it is an amount per high school that doesn't begin to cover the salary, but it is the amount that's given to every high school, per high school to every district in North Carolina.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. I do believe, am I not correct, that our many municipalities provide additional SROs that, again, is not, do we pay for that or do they provide it?
So there's a portion of SRO fund. So every district is provided approximately $38,000 to $39,000 per high school for an SRO. Most SROs, the cost of an SRO in most cases is much more than that, and that difference is picked up by the municipal law enforcement agency. Unless I'm not sure if we pick up any of it or not. Mr. Smith might have some more.
I have a further clarification for that, Ms. Moore. So in a few jurisdictions, the local jurisdiction has requested to provide a second SRO at a school. Those schools are Apex High School, Apex Friendship, Holly Springs, Roseville High School, Holly Springs High School. And for 3 of those 4 schools, in lieu of a bicycle officer, private security bicycle officer that is funded through local funds, we do provide support to that local municipality in the amount of $21,000 toward the cost of the second SRO. Is that the answer you were looking for, Dr. Martin?
That helps. We don't have time tonight to fully capture that, but what I would like to put a request in is that as we do this work, and I would like it sooner as opposed to later, if we could have sort of an accounting of the whole process. Because it's not something that you can easily find in either our budget book or our CAFR. But if we could see a total accounting of dollars, where they come from, what are flexible dollars and what are dedicated dollars, I think that would really help the review process. And I think that for the community, I think one of the things that is really important is I think we need an and approach to this work more than an or approach to this work. We absolutely need more restorative justice, more counselors, and so on. But as others have noted, there is also a role for SROs. I myself have seen more de-escalation with where SROs are present than when just the regular police force shows up. I believe that that is evidence of the effectiveness of training. If people are trained to de-escalate, there's a chance the de-escalation is more likely to happen. And so I think it's critical as we go forward to, for both our perspective, the public's perspective, and law enforcement perspective, to recognize that SROs are not police, are not sheriffs. They are a different group of people with a different set of responsibilities. And so when, as a school system, we outline some guidelines and expectations, well, we might be glad for them to be the broad expectations. We don't have control over that, but we should have control over the expectations in the school system, because the expectations for an SRO should be distinct from the expectations, generally across the school system. In that context, as we move forward, I would like to highlight 3 issues that I would really like to see addressed in the SRO MOU as it changes. I do think that this has been a pretty good agreement, but there's always room for improvement. I would love to see us address more explicitly our use of force. Particularly for the community's sake, I think it's important to highlight what our current MOU does say about the use of force. Use of force may be implemented pursuant to agency procedures and protocols, as well as applicable laws, if objectively reasonable based on the totality of the circumstances, and shall not be excessive, arbitrary, or malicious. Now, I would love to see more explicit language to add chokeholds, for example, but I think we can agree that a chokehold is excessive, arbitrary, and malicious. But I want to highlight that that language is there. We need to just make sure that it is actually paid attention to and we deal with it. So any use of force, as currently stated, shall not be excessive, arbitrary, or malicious. My second thing that I'd like to see us address more explicitly is reporting. Now, a lot of the reporting guidelines that we have in this MOU are actually quite good. And if you look at a lot of guidelines across the nation, a lot of our reporting guidelines, the expectation is there. So I believe if we're actually keeping this information and getting it reported, we're on the right track. I think our deficiency in reporting is that you and I and the public can't go see the information of the reports. I think that's what really needs to change. So it is my understanding that the quarterly reports that are spelled out in the agreement, particularly Article 3, Section 3B, I believe those reports are happening, but we as the board need to hear them, and I believe the public needs access to them. So that's a change. It's a change I'd like to see explicit in the MOU, but as evidence that the current MOU is being agreed to, I would like in a report sooner than later, an accounting of that reporting that has been happening. The final thing that I would really like to see us address is dealing with accountability to a greater extent. I believe that reporting and accountability go hand in hand. We do have in the current MOU that if there are issues, they need to be reported to you, Mr. Smith. And I do know that there have been cases where reports have been made, actions have been taken, and I appreciate that. But I think we need to be much more explicit in our accountability guidelines because things aren't always going to work out right. When they don't, do we have a process in place to address them and hold things appropriately accountable? So I think if we address those issues, we will have a much stronger agreement. Finally, let me note that as we address them, and I know you're familiar, meetings are not just meetings of all people of the same voice. We have a tendency sometimes in our focus groups to have focus groups of this interest group or that interest group. But as you will remember, Mr. Smith, I think one of the important things that happened when we worked on that arrest and warrant policy is for the first time, we brought child welfare advocates and law enforcement and school system staff together in the same room at the same time for a common conversation. And that common conversation, I think, led to a better position than if any interest group has a single voice. So I'd really encourage some of that be part of the process going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Mrs. Cash.
I'm not really sure how to talk about this because number one, I know we hear advocacy groups, lots of advocacy groups. And I do feel like principals feel like as the board talks that their perception and their opinion is not in the popular sector. And I don't know how to get the principals and the assistant principals out there to be able to talk and give us their opinion and or another side. However, I wish this board would not take things away from our principals that help them in their schools without giving them something in replacement. We are not giving them counselors. We are not giving them psychologists. We are not giving them social workers. And then we want to take the SROs away. I do not want to take one more tool away from our principals until we give them a lot more tools to work with. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Mrs. Cash. Ms. Johnson-Hosmer.
Thank you. Ms. Cash, I certainly agree with you that our principals should be engaged in the conversation, and I think Mr. Sutton addressed that early on in terms of talking about the timeline. But what I will say is I feel very certain that we are not taking the tool away from the principal based on every board member's comments. So I don't feel like tonight is going to be making any changes regarding removing this tool. I think we're all on the same page where we wish we were giving them new tools and additional tools, but what I will say is we recognize that we don't have the money at this time, and quite frankly, this board has been very clear at looking to add new resources and other professionals in this space to assist in our school buildings, and we just haven't been able to do that. And we do have legislators who support it, but financially we haven't gotten there. And I think it's also important to say, truly, just like all of you, I've received all the emails and phone calls from advocates, students, parents alike, and quite frankly, like everything we do, a handful on both sides of the coin. But quite frankly, I guess my perspective tonight on this vote is really about the consistency of requests to ask us to make a change, and we haven't done that. And by change, I mean people have brought us other tools that they've asked us to implement and pilot, like peace builders, and we've not done that. So I would be remiss if I didn't say and acknowledge that people have brought us alternatives, probably for the last 5 or 7 years at the very least, and we've not done that. So I think it's fair to say that we've heard loud and clear and been responsive to all the parties who agree that we keep SROs in some fashion. And both Dr. Martin and Mr. Haggerty removed one of my questions, which was really reallocation. And that may or may not impact my vote because we don't actually have a full answer here. And I want to be clear to my board members that whatever I decide to do regarding my vote isn't about ignoring the side of folks who asked us to keep SROs. It is really about our inability to be intentional in doing this work even through COVID. We've known for years that people have provided data, given us feedback, and asked us to be very intentional in the conversation and including them. And I really can't say it any more clearly and passionately as Mr. Haggerty did. So I'll just say, amen, Mr. Haggerty, to all the things that you said. And I think for me, this is really about my own, the children who are in my life, who at the end of the day will look back at these videos and say, were you on the right side of history? Did you truly do everything that you could do to impact the change? Will we truly know what the data is? And I've said this to many of you privately, that ultimately what we also know is we're going back to school in August, some form or fashion. And without a shadow of a doubt, we know that there are families, primarily Black and Brown families, who will make a decision because they don't have the supports and infrastructure to keep their children at home and do remote learning. So I will be very open, as I have been with you all. It's clear to me that our schools could be blacker and browner than we've seen before, and we are going into this school year without any changes that will impact those students, families, and advocates who've said to us how strongly they feel about our decision-making on SROs. And so I acknowledge that the board has heard that, we've repeated it. And at this point, I just got to call us out on our rhetoric of saying that we believe and trust that we should do something when, quite frankly, we haven't done it. You all have known that I've been on this board for 7 years, and I've been a huge proponent of 9 votes is really always what we want to strive to achieve, because it really speaks to every one of us being invested in the decision that we make as a board. I will say, I think for the first time in my political career, quite frankly, probably my public service career too, that I'm over trying to build a consensus for something that we keep saying that we know needs to change, but we haven't actually been intentional to do it. And by intentional, I mean we've intentionally said it, but we've not moved hell and high water to make those changes. And it is personal to me at this point, because I'm personally hearing from people who I love, who have never been involved in this conversation, saying, are you really going to let this ride and do nothing in a time where our kids have watched the grief day in and day out, their bodies being policed and brutalized? And so when we say defund or reimagine, what we also know is that we don't have a plan for a better system. And people who've thought about this system longer than most of us have, we weren't willing to implement those systems either. And so at the very least, regardless of how I vote today, I have to be on record for my own kid, so that she knows no matter how hard this is, what this means for an outcome for me, that I'm willing to stand and say what is a truth for my household at this point, for the grief and turmoil that I get to witness every single day in my house, because I'm not going anywhere. I'm quarantined like the rest of you. So it is very personal. And again, the outcomes will be what they are for me. But the bigger outcome is that the lesson that I've tried to instill in my daughter and all the young people who support me, meaning they worked on my campaigns, they continue to tell their parents to support me. These young people have invested in me, and this today is my investment in them. And surely I am not saying that that is an investment in all 162,000 students, because certainly we have students, families, educators, and administrators who believe that we should still have SRO officers in the building. And quite frankly, when we talk about psychologists and social workers, I'm still of the same thought that, well, you do know that they come as racists as well. So there's still work to be done regardless of what we reimagine in our buildings. But for me, this vote is really about the disappointment that we've talked a good talk and still are walking away not having invested, knowing, quite frankly, that we promised people we would do this.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson-Hostler. Ms. Kushner.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. And I think I've raised and lowered my hand like 5 times. But hearing my colleagues, I just want to thank my colleagues for this discussion and for your impassioned views. This is a very difficult subject that has clearly captured the attention of our community, and I appreciate the input. And Chair Sutton, I'm grateful to have, and to Mr. Smith and Superintendent Moore, I'm grateful to have the timeline that has been put forth. We are committing to that, and we're committing you to follow that timeline. We will clearly, you will be hearing from us, and we expect a robust community-based discussion. There are folks demanding it, and we owe it to them. So expect us to be engaged. I think the BAC meeting I have tomorrow on reopening is going to be quickly followed in the coming months with one on school resource officers. I think we need to reimagine. We need to put our foundational values in place of de-escalation, decriminalizing, and making our schools safe for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kushner. And again, to all board members, we honor and hear the commitment. We hear the issues around integrity and our commitment to making sure that we follow through on what we promised we will do. And I can assure you that over the next few months, we will lead on this issue. With that, I will call for the question. I'll start with Ms. Cash.
Aye.
Ms. Kushner.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Hagerty.
I'm going to hold you to what you said, Mr. Sutton, but I'll vote aye.
All right. Ms. Mahaffey.
Aye.
Johnson Hostler.
No.
Mr. Fletcher.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. So on a vote of 8-1, we will vote to extend the SRO MOU by 1 year. Now moving to our last action item, which is the Daniels Middle School name change. And I will be presenting this item. Board members, if you haven't, I'll turn the précis. The role of Josephus Daniels, for whom Daniels Middle School is named, in orchestrating the overthrow of a duly elected multiracial government in Wilmington in 1898, is well documented. What resulted is known as the Wilmington Race Riot of 1898, where at least 60 Black residents were murdered. This is significant because it welcomed an era of Jim Crow that disenfranchised African Americans in North Carolina for decades, caused irreparable harm to generations of Black families, and forever altered the face of politics and government in North Carolina. According to an article in today's News and Observer, Lee A. Craig, head of the Department of Economics at NC State and author of a 2013 biography of Josephus Daniels, states that the writings of Daniels indicated a belief that Black culture was inferior to white culture. And while he believed education for Blacks would be the key equalizer, Josephus Daniels did not support having white taxpayers pay for that education. In that same article, Frank Daniels Jr., the grandson of Josephus Daniels, said in the statement just this past Tuesday that his grandfather's bigoted beliefs overshadowed his other accomplishments, including, Daniel said, creating one of the nation's leading newspapers in the News and Observer. He went on further to say that Josephus Daniels' legacy of service to North Carolina and our country does not transcend his reprehensible stand on race and his active support of racist activities. Daniel said, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Daniels family and the NNO for their progressive stance. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Daniels family and the News and Observer for their progressive stance for equality and fairness for all North Carolina citizens. In the late 1860s, in a story that's probably similar to the one that we saw in Wilmington that was destroyed, freed slaves founded the community of Oberlin, which was the largest Reconstruction era Black settlement in Wake County. Raleigh neighborhoods like Cameron Park, Hayes Barton, and Oakwood all had restrictive covenants that excluded Blacks from ownership. By 1880, some 100 families lived in Oberlin, what is now Oberlin Village, named in tribute to the Ohio College that supported education for Negroes. They established Wilson Temple United Methodist Church in the late 1860s, Oberlin School in 1865, Oberlin Baptist Church about 1880, and Latter University in about 1892. They buried their loved ones at the Oberlin Cemetery, and a few of these sites are now designated as historic landmarks and can still be found today along Oberlin Road. Oberlin School was one of the first public schools in Raleigh, a two-story brick building that was constructed in 1916 and was closed 50 years later in 1966 in the wake of Raleigh's attempt to desegregate the schools. Oberlin Baptist historian Diane P. Turner, the primary cause of the decline of Oberlin from a peak to the remaining homeowners and residents was the Great Depression. She went on to say that all the land on Oberlin Road between Wade Avenue and what is now Fairview Avenue was owned and occupied by Oberlin's Black residents. Today, two-thirds or more of its white-owned, two-thirds or more of it is white-owned, and many businesses occupy that space. The remnants that remain of the glory that was Oberlin Village is a small pocket of Black-owned businesses on Oberlin Road, which and explore Oberlin Village's glorious past. So with that, I want to turn this over to Mrs. Kushner to make a motion in regard to changing the name of Daniels Middle School.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. And I do make a motion, I do move to rescind the naming of Josephus Daniels Middle School and to rename the school Oberlin Middle School. And with that, I want to add my comments in support of what Chair Sutton just read. Josephus Daniels was a white supremacist. He played an instrumental role, as Mr. Sutton outlined, in the 1898 Wilmington coup. That is the only coup d'etat recorded in the United States of America. It was a massacre that overturned a duly elected fusion government of Blacks and whites, Republicans and populists who governed Wilmington, and that was overturned. Mr. Daniels did regret the violence late in his life, but he never regretted or recanted his white supremacy. And the recantation of the violence was tepid, one could say. So in working for justice, we cannot be tepid. We cannot be neutral. We are compelled to teach our students and our employees and our community that Black lives matter. So with that, I'm with conviction, I make the motion to rescind the naming of Josephus Daniels Middle School and to rename the school Oberlin Middle School.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you for that motion, Ms. Kushner, and thank you also, Mr. Hegarty, for that second. Any comments from board members? Mrs. Scott.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. I'm very much supportive of this proposed name change. I do want to use this opportunity to encourage people, if they are not familiar with the story of the Holt family, that they do take a look at that. I know that students from Explorers Middle School had presented to the board several years ago information about Mr. Holt, but his story during a time of post Brown versus Board is important to uplift. I'm thankful that the board is moving forward with this. I'm thankful for this long overdue name change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Scott. Dr. Martin.
Thank you. I enthusiastically support this action. As I started doing some digging into the history of our predominantly African-American schools here in Wake County, I was so struck that Daniel's school that Oberlin School closed at the time of efforts to, build integration. And I think it is entirely fitting to reopen Oberlin School to make a bold statement that we must be anti-racist, that education is the great equalizer, and we must make it so. So I am so happy to see the name Oberlin School come back open. This is an important history, and I encourage anybody who has time to spend some time in the beautiful sculpture garden known as Oberlin Rising. It's a beautiful sculpture garden, sculptures by Thomas Sayer, and there is poetry throughout that garden, which is, I forget the name. Very moving, very masterful. Please spend some time and learn of the history of the Oberlin community. It's very strong, very moving, and it's exciting to hear those doors open again.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Mrs. Cash.
I support this. I think that a person that is a person that's been identified that was not someone that would really want to be associated with. However, I do want to say this is not about the Daniels family. This is about that person, not the Daniels family. I just want to go back and think about when I was on the school board in the 90s, Frank Daniels Jr. and the N&O probably was the one group of people that taught me a lot about the equality for all people. And I remember that to get an endorsement from the N&O and from Frank Daniels Jr. was that you had to be for all students being successful, no matter what their income or their color was. And so it was hard to get an endorsement from the N&O and from Frank Daniels Jr. unless you believed that philosophy. So I just want to reiterate that this is about one person in that family and not about the family. But I do agree with the proposal.
Thank you, Mrs. Cash. Ms. Kushner, did you have another comment?
Yes, sir. And I thank you, Ms. Cash, for that comment. I wanted it's important to underscore. I thank you. But I had meant at the end to also lift up the trailblazers, the Daniels Five, who are known as the Daniels Five. September 1st, 1961, 5 young students integrated all white Daniels Middle School. And I want to talk about those Black students who did that: Gloria Hunter, Parnell Jones, Larry Manuel, Rebecca Bryant, and Anna Morgan. Those are profiles and courage that I wanted to have mentioned this evening as we take this action tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kushner, for lifting up those 5. Other comments from board members? I want to again thank the board for being in support of this as we look to take this step. Many will probably say it's just a name, but we all know that there's a lot in a name. And I think it says a lot that this board to take this step. We know too that it is symbolic, and what is also is important is what happens inside the school building. But I think it's also important what that building says, and that most importantly, not just Daniels Middle School, but all 192 schools in the Wake County Public School System are welcoming places. And it's important when you walk on the campus and see a name and see the doors and see the logo of the Wake County Public School System that this is a welcoming place and a welcoming place to all residents, all students, and all families. And so again, this is a very important step. I understand that some may say it's symbolic in a lot of ways, but one that I think is long overdue. And at some point down in the future, as we get back to a sense of normalcy, and we get to a point where we are ready to remove and plant new signage, we hope to have some bit of a ceremony and invite folks from the Oberlin Village community, the Friends of Oberlin Village, to be a part of what we hope will be a momentous occasion at that time. And so with that, I will call for the vote. Again, I start with Vice Chair Cash.
Aye.
Ms. Kushner,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mrs. Scott,
Aye.
Mr. Hegarty,
Aye.
Mrs. Mahaffey,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson Hostler,
Aye.
Mr. Fletcher.
Aye.
And I enthusiastically and wholeheartedly vote aye as well. And so thank you all for the unanimous support to change the name from Daniels Middle School to what is now Oberlin Middle School. Thank you all for that. At this time, if I can entertain a motion to go into closed session for the item stated on the agenda.
We are going into closed session. We're going into closed session. I make a motion to go into closed session to consider confidential personnel information protected under GS 143-318-11A, 1A3, and A6, and to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in GS 143-318-11A3, to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in GS 143-318-11A3 due to current litigation AB by and through her parents, TB and CB versus WCBF 19-DC-06163. To consider confidential student information protected under GS 115C-402 and the Family Education and Privacy Right Act 20 USC 1232G.
Second. Lindsay, Mahaffey.
Thank you for that. Got a motion by Mrs. Cass and a second by Mrs. Mahaffey to go into closed session per the items stated on the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor show by sign of aye.
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 I'm sorry, I had a quick lapse there. Let me go around to the roll call.
Thanks, Keith.
Got on a roll. Mrs. Cash,
Aye.
Mrs. Kushner,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mrs. Scott,
Aye.
Mr. Hegarty,
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Johnson Hostler,
Aye.
Mr. Fletcher,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. That gives us unanimous vote. We are now in closed session. Thank you all. Thank you, public, for joining us for tonight's meeting. And I'll see you all in closed session. Thanks much.
Jonathan, did I leave that too early? Was it all okay?
No, you're good.
Okay.
Nobody's made a motion in open session yet, have we? I just got on.
Okay, no, but I heard as I was clicking leave event, I heard I make a motion. I thought, oh no, did I leave too early
No,
from closed? Okay.
I think Bill tried to make the open session motion while we're still in closed session.
Okay.
I thought, but I was clicking off too, so I was like, oh, well.
Here we are.
I'm just glad I'm in the right place. I had my doubts. I was like clicking.
End up in a Zumba live meeting or something on accident.
All right, I think we got everybody. So I will entertain a motion to approve the HR comments as recommended by the superintendent.
So moved.
Would that include all of the HR recommendations?
All of them.
Thank you.
Second.
A motion by Dr. Martin and a second by Mrs. Scott to improve all of the HR appointments recommended by the superintendent. Ms. Scott, I'll start with you.
Aye.
Dr. Martin.
Aye.
Krishna.
Aye.
Mr. Fletcher.
Aye.
Ms. Johnson Hostler.
Aye.
Ms. Mahaffey.
Aye.
And Mr. Hagerty.
Aye.
I vote as well. Unanimous support for the HR recommendations. All of them. I entertain a
Chair.
motion to adjourn.
I'll so move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, show by sign of aye. Jonathan.
Chris Haggerty, aye. Done.
Bill Fletcher, aye.
Jim Martin, aye.
Hostler, aye.
Heather Scott, aye.
Lindsay Mahaffey, aye.
Christine Kushner, aye.
And Keith Sutton, aye. Thank you all so much. Thank you for hanging in and good work today, everybody. I appreciate it. Get some rest.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Thank you, everybody.
Everybody.
Be safe, everyone. Good night.
Everybody.